Welcome once more to another episode of the N64 Japanese Eye. We have yet another Japanese exclusive N64 title to review, with the simple aim of answering the question, can you play and enjoy this game without knowing any Japanese whatsoever? Previously I reviewed Custom Robo, a game which sold so well in Japan that it was one of the console's most highly decorated games by media over there. So when news was announced that a sequel was already in production, I had no reason to believe that Nintendo would not see this game outside of Japan. While many people will say that Nintendo doesn't listen to its fans these days, and to be fair, nothing much has changed. You see, despite petitions from those of us outside of Japan, Custom Robo V2, like its predecessor, remained a region-exclusive title. But Custom Robo V2 picks up a year after the first game, which ended with the Robo Cup. This time around you have two different storylines to play through, and it starts off with you receiving Ray Mark II, the newest model of the robot, to begin your quest. Like the first game in the series, the game contains a huge amount of Japanese, and there are no fan translation patches, so you will need a good strategy guide which you can find online if you really want to get the most out of this game. But also, like the first game, is the fact that even without understanding the storyline, you are able to fully go through the game and complete it without having to know much of what's going along the way. Perhaps my biggest criticism of this game though, is that the storyline feels much more of a chore to play at times. There will be moments where it seems for hours you will be in the same area battling an endless number of enemies. But on the flip side, although the storyline does feel like it is compressed, the actual storyline does seem to take you into more varied locations, and you do feel a greater sense of freedom when playing. The graphics seem to have had next to no improvements made to them. That's fine if you like me, you like the first game's aesthetics, but when watching the game side by side, it's mostly down to the effects when battling that you may spot some slight differences between the two games. When you are battling, the game plays exactly how you'd want it to. It's still just as responsive and free-flowing as it previously was, but the additional number of weapons and modifications really does make this game worth picking up. If you were hoping that the game would have come a long way further, then you may be disappointed, but for those of us who were happy to get more of the same, then you'll be pleased to know it feels awfully familiar. Perhaps the biggest upgrade to the game though, is that you can now play this with up to 3 friends. If you have a community of friends who have some incredible robots they have created, then you can all upload them and battle to the death on the same screen now. The music this time around doesn't seem quite as polished as Custom Robo. There are still some great, awesome tunes, but they are few and far between this time. And so the music used in key points of the game doesn't seem to fit in with what's going on in the story at different times. And so if you don't understand what's going on from the text, then it can give you a completely different impression of what's actually happening. Thankfully though, the sound effects have been improved, and even with the added weapons and modifications, everything still sounds crisp and clear. There's not really much more to say about Custom Robo V2, and so in closing, it's pretty much an update of the original. Sure, there's a new storyline to get to grips with, but in terms of actual gameplay, little has changed. In that sense, it reminds me of the Pokemon series, and so if you like the first game, then there's no doubt about it that you will like this sequel. But if you didn't like the first game, there's not really anything here that will change your mind. In my opinion though, if you've watched both of the N64 Custom Robo reviews and liked what you saw but you can't face the facts of dealing with the Japanese language barrier, then you may want to start with the 4th game in the Custom Robo series, which was Custom Robo Battle Revolution. It was the first game in the series to be released outside of Japan, so it is completely in English, but you will need a GameCube to play it. And if you don't own a GameCube, well...
You said you were gonna buy a GameCube. Do it! Just do it! You said yesterday you'd buy a game today. A GameCube. Buy the GameCube! Just buy it! Buy the GameCube! Just buy a GameCube! Don't let your GameCubes be dreams, let them be GameCubes! GameCubes are everyone else's dreams, but they could be your reality. Cube game, cube. Do it! Buy a GameCube! What is this? You said you were gonna buy a GameCube. Do it! Buy a GameCube! Everyone else's dream is a GameCube. Make it your reality. It would be a real game, cube game. Don't let Your dreams cast into nothingness. No one bought those, but people did buy the GameCube. Just do it! Buy the GameCube! That is an ice cream truck.